I've done it again this week, so I'd recommend it to anybody.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
you are likely to be dealt with within a week, and that nobody should be involving themselves in this disorder.
Keir Starmer holds another emergency meeting, but there's been relative silence on this. So, is it two-tier Keir? Elon Musk certainly thinks so, and
What we saw last night, and I saw that footage in Birmingham, that's just outrageous and unacceptable. That was criminality and violence. But what was missing? Where were the police?
My exclusive interview with Dame Priti Patel, her first on TV since announcing she's running for Tory leader, and she doesn't hold back.
I'd be cancelling, for example, annual leave. Look at the scale of what we're seeing. I'd be making sure we're asking the right questions. Have the police got all the resources that they need?
She sets out her vision for what the Tory party would look like under her potential leadership. Also tonight, we reveal Labour's secret plans for illegal immigrants, that something could risk inflaming tensions even more. Plus,
the family have been subjected to horrific racist and Islamophobic abuse on social media.
The brothers who allegedly punched armed police officers have got a new lawyer. And on my panel is broadcaster and columnist Esther Krakow. We've got the director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, an ex-Labour advisor, Matthew Larser. And you're going to have to look very closely here. Can you guess who people thought was at the Plymouth protests last night? Yeah, have another little look at that. Who's it? Remember a familiar face there, potentially? All right, get ready, Britain. Here we go. It's a GB News exclusive for you. Labour's secret plans for illegal immigrants. Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines from the GB Newsroom at just gone 9 o'clock. Some breaking news in the last half hour. The Prime Minister has chaired another emergency Cobra meeting to deal with the ongoing violent disorder across the UK. Speaking moments ago, Sir Keir Starmer has promised communities will be safe.
The meeting was to coordinate our response to the disorder, and I made it very clear on a number of occasions that those involved will feel the full force of the law. So we coordinated, we went through some of the numbers. Over 400 people now have been arrested, 100 have been charged, some in relation to online activity, and a number of them are already in court. And I'm now expecting substantive sentencing before the end of this week. That should send a very powerful message.
Meanwhile, suspects have appeared in court after the week of violence in the UK, sparked by the stabbings in Southport. Among them, a child aged just 15 who arrived before magistrates in Liverpool with his mother after being identified from a video on TikTok. Meanwhile, a man has become the first suspect to be convicted of stirring up racial hatred during the riots after posting messages on Facebook. 100 people have now been charged and more than 400 arrested so far. And police have appealed for video footage of criminality, including an attack on a car during a counter-protest staged in Birmingham. Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed the news that children injured in the attack last week have been discharged from hospital. The Prime Minister also thanked staff at Alderhay Hospital in Liverpool. 3 children, 7-year-old Elsie Stancoombe, 9-year-old Alice Aguiar and 6-year-old BB King died as a result of the attack at the Heartspace Community Centre. A vigil is being held in memory of one of the girls, Alice Aguiar, in Southport tonight. In other news, Elon Musk has criticised Sir Keir Starmer, branding him two-tier Keir, responding to a tweet from the Prime Minister about protecting Muslim communities. The billionaire owner of X also questioned if it was Britain or the Soviet Union after a man was apparently arrested over Facebook comments. The row started after Mr Musk claimed that civil war is inevitable in the UK, comments the government condemned. And Great Britain's equestrian team have finished the Paris Games with 5 medals, including 2 golds. And Josh Kerr has won a silver medal in the men's 1500 metres. Meanwhile, 16-year-old Sky Brown defied a shoulder injury to claim a bronze medal for Great Britain at the women's skateboard park. And Great Britain's Jack Carlin, Ed Lowe and Hamish Turnbull have won a silver medal in the men's team sprint, bringing Team GB's total medal haul to 12 golds so far and putting them 5th in the table. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Millions and millions of people are currently at boiling point over illegal immigration. Labour has been criticised for blaming everything on the far right, ignoring the concerns of normal people and staying silent when, at times, gangs of Muslim men commit violent disorder. Well, now it appears that Labour is planning on ploughing ahead with 2, some would say, completely tone-deaf policies that could risk inflaming tensions more. GB News can reveal that the government appears to be planning for the Channel migrant crisis to continue for around another 12 years, despite promising to smash the gangs. Well, we can reveal that the Home Office is spending £265 million on running and massively expanding Yarlswood Immigration Removal Centre, which houses, amongst other suspected illegal migrants, Channel migrants as well. It is one of 7 centres that will apparently see their capacity jump to 3,000. The expansion and works will start in April 2026. They will last at least 6 years, possibly 10, according to a government tender document. Well, the implication is that they expect the Channel migrant crisis to still be ongoing at around 2036, isn't it? Now, one Border Force source told us migrants in France will be rubbing their hands with glee. This is an open invitation to come to Britain and get what you want. It's deeply troubling. But another Labour policy is what's been called Operation Scatter, to scatter asylum seekers all over the UK by closing large military sites and instead putting them in empty houses, former care homes and student housing blocks. Well, councils have reportedly been asked to agree to asylum accommodation plans between local authorities and central government. which would set targets to increase dispersed accommodation. So, for example, Labour has closed the Bibby stock home, but now apparently the local council there says that they might have to use hotels to house migrants instead. And, of course, the taxpayer could be footing a huge bill. Now, nothing excuses some of the absolutely disgraceful scenes that we have seen on the streets of Britain recently, and the attempts to torture a migrant hotel are quite clearly despicable, amongst other things. But behind that layer of radicals are millions and millions of ordinary people who are fed up of feeling like they're second-class citizens in their own country. Now, Britain is a powder keg at the moment, and I can't help but wonder that if Labour goes ahead with Operation Scatter and really does plan on the Channel migrant crisis lasting for another 12 years, are they simply choosing to ignore the concerns of those millions of people? Let's get thoughts of my panel tonight. We've got columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow. We've got the director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, and ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larter. Look, Stephen, I'm going to start with you on this, because we have two issues at play there, which is, are Labour being quite disingenuous with the smash the gang stuff if they are seriously planning on expanding a migrant detention centre, potentially with a view of it still being fully operational at maximum capacity for another 10 years or so? But the other more concerning thing is this Operation Scatter thing could conceivably see private housing stock and empty housing being used to accommodate asylum seekers. And I worry that that would quite literally put Brits second.
Well, I'm pretty concerned about the way that the Labour Party is following on a policy that's very similar to that of the Conservative Party when it comes to not stopping the boats. Their idea that they want to collaborate more with Europe over security is actually a failure. It won't work because it's not got any deterrence in there, and the European Union has recognised that themselves, hence the reason they moved to a policy for more dispersal across European Union states. And that dispersal policy is exactly what the Labour Party wants to do with Operation Scatter. Now, the problem with Operation Scatter, as we saw under the Conservatives, is you're not going to find 3,000 per a county like Hampshire coming into Winchester, as the Labour Party suggested, 3,000 per county, because Winchester is too expensive to house them there. So they'll put them in places like Southampton or Portsmouth. And you'll always end up in the poorest parts of town. And what that will do is it pushes up the prices of social housing at the cheaper end than HMOs and social housing, and any social housing we get will be squeezed even tighter.
If we have a look, Esther, at what's going on at the moment, OK, where behind that layer of people who go too far and who have done some unspeakable things, and I can't condemn those people enough, right, are millions and millions of normal people with just perfectly legitimate concerns. And this, to me, looks as though, like, Labour is just ignoring those people. And I worry for what happens going forward there.
Well, originally, the logic behind the dispersal idea is 90% of asylum seekers that become refugees are sent to basically five cities across the UK, so places like Glasgow and London. And the main reason for that is because they're the only ones with the resources to actually integrate, as loosely as we can use those words, refugees. So they have the translation services and the council services and all of that. You can now see, and this was a concern of mine, why Labour is so keen on devolution and devolving more powers to local authorities. Because once you make refugees their problem, councils are now obligated to give them a monthly stipend to support their living expenses. They now have to find them accommodation. So the government can write it off the books and say, listen, we've cleared through the backlog, but now local communities are going to be absorbing more of these people. Yes, there are concerns that in certain sort of counties in this country, they would just be too expensive to house them. But there's also the bigger question of many councils in this country, particularly in England and Wales, are on the brink of bankruptcy. Where are they supposed to find the money to, one, pay for all of these immigrants, refugees, to give them the services that they need to actually integrate them into the country, assuming we even care about integration? And then what are the questions around, what if they need to go to the local school and then take the places of students that are up the road that can't get local school places, so have to travel further and further, assuming they even end up getting a place? And this is one of those things that are just going to inflame social tensions. The idea that, you need to disperse more refugees around the country because 90% of them going to 5 cities is not acceptable is fine. But if you're not giving them the resources to back it up and not looking at a long-term solution to tell British people, actually, we're not pushing you to the back of the queue for a bunch of African migrants, then what's the point? Well,
that's that. And that's because, look, you look at this now, Matthew, and, Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer They're not listening, are they?
No, I don't agree with that at all. I mean, you know, this is the two stories that you highlighted. The Yarlswood one, there's one very clear word in the title of the very centre itself which dismisses your argument, which is removal. Yarlswood is a removal centre. The Conservatives failed to remove people. They failed to remove people when they failed in their refugee application and where they can go back to a safe country. So, therefore, to expand Yarlswood is to expand the removal capacity so that once people...
need that if you thought that the Channel migrant crisis was going to stop.
No, you would, because A, you're always going to have people who are going to come here illegally, and then because not everybody comes across the Channel, and, you know, there's never going to be zero...
yeah.
About 30,000 a year,
and the people that overstay their visas, and on top of that list, I think, are Indians.
Exactly, and Yarlswood does those. So what we need to do is have a system that works. What we don't have at the moment is a system that actually processes applications in a timely way, and when people can be removed when the application's failed, it removes them to their home country if it's safe to do so.
There are 30,000 every year that are failing to be removed because they fail the asylum process, and out of that come the top 5 countries: Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Somalia. And these are countries that we don't have any returns agreements in place with, so we'll not be able to move them out. So you're building Yarlswood as just an acceptance that we won't be able to get rid of them.
Well, the building Yarlswood is an acceptance that we can send people back to their countries where it's safe to do so from the other countries.
That's the crux, where it's safe to do so. If you don't have a returns agreement, once they land in Britain, the assumption, which is right, is that they will remain in Britain because, and again,
then they go to the council.
No, because Keir Starmer has been very clear about that. This is someone who's interested in following the letter of ECHR sort of rulings to the letter. So it's not, we're not making assumptions. This will be the case. If you come to this country from a country where we don't have a removals agreement with, you will not be sent back. At the moment, we have over 14,000.
Which is why we need to have fewer people coming here.
It's not about that, though. But the problem is bigger because we have over 14,000...
By taking the action that's been set out, by smashing the gangs.
Foreign national offenders, over 14,000 of them in British prisons that can't be sent back. What are we supposed... These are not people that came across...
We need to have fewer people...
foreigners that came to commit...
Exactly, which is why we need fewer people arriving in the first place.
These two stories are linked, OK, because you've got the potential admittance that we're not going to see a reduction in illegal immigration if you're going to expand not just Yarlswood, but other...
Not a reduction, but there will always be illegal migration.
But people would like things stopped. They would like some form of...
order.
You're never going to get to zero.
OK, all right. So you've got that. You've also then, simultaneously, it appears, got Labour's policy now to shut down things like the Bibby Stockholm barge or large-scale centres like Wethersfield, etc., and instead... make local authorities buy
It's not quite that, Patrick. No, most of it is...
That's a more permanent solution, isn't it? Your community would conceivably be different...
No, the key thing we need to do is reduce the bill, which is ridiculous at the moment, because the Tories, rather than dealing with the problem, just did what they thought was an emergency response of hotels. Hang on,
this is bait and switch.
No, it's not because the councils aren't going to pay for it. That's just not true. It's still going to be funded by the Home Office. It's still going to be funded by the Home Office. There's going to be an obligation on councils.
It comes out of a different budget. It comes out of the Treasury budget. It shifts from the Home Office and it moves into the Treasury budget, and all the Treasury then has to do is give extra grants to the councils to fund those people that they would have kept in the hotels in the first place. But instead now you're pushing that onto the council for 2 different areas of housing.
You're talking about reducing costs.
But one is social housing, and the other is low-cost housing. And we have seen in the north of England particularly, companies coming along to HMOs and those people who are social housing saying, we will buy them up for 5 years from you so that we can house them with those coming in from asylum. All that does now is push up the prices.
I think that has to be avoided, which is why there's a priority in it for doing things like unused student halls of residence, etc., which is a lot cheaper than putting people in 4- and 5-star hotels.
Is this not incredibly tone-deaf at the moment? Is this not incredibly...
Well, it's not an announcement done at the moment, it's a leaked story.
Student accommodation is already obscenely expensive. Do you think people are going to tolerate in their local communities that their student housing is going to get more expensive to house a bunch of asylum seekers who were once the problem of detention centres that have now been overrun? People are not going to tolerate that. Well, you're just making the lives of British people
No,
worse.
we're not. The problem exists, and the problem needs to be dealt with.
How do you deal with it if you can't remove them?
Well, what you do is remove as many people as you can to safe countries. Keir talked in the election about... we don't remove anybody to Bangladesh when we should be removing people to Bangladesh, which is, given the events of the last week, a safe country. The Rwanda plane was sat there costing to British taxpayers tens of thousands of pounds every single day. In the first week of the Labour government, Yvette Cooper used it to remove 100 people who should be here illegally. So, of course, there are places where you can't see we're back to. We need to get fewer people coming.
Final word on this, Steve, now, which is in light of what we've got going on at the moment, and I will re-emphasise that some some of what we are seeing is absolutely unacceptable, OK? Behind that, we do have millions of ordinary people who are just very worried about Britain, right? If we have the simultaneous thing of all of this going on at the moment, and now Operation Scatter is rolled out, is that going to make things better or worse, Steve?
In my view, I think when you've got population rising and impacting local communities, the tensions will rise. And it's just an inevitability. This is something that is social, happened across history. This will happen again until the government decides that it can actually remove tens of thousands of people and stop tens of thousands coming in. It unfortunately will lead to some more tension.
Well, it's a lively start, obviously. The Home Office said that it does not comment on commercial agreements. That's the Yarl's Wood contract that we mentioned earlier on. But it did stress that contracts are awarded following a competitive and transparent procurement process. So there we go. Now, the family at the centre of the Manchester airport storm, well, they've got a new lawyer, haven't they?
The family have been subjected to horrific, racist and Islamophobic abuse on social media.
So is it normal for people to hold, you know, on bail, to hold regular press conferences, or have Greater Manchester Police completely lost control of this narrative now? You know, why are they taking so long to conclude their investigation? Former senior police officer in the Met, Kevin Hurley, offers his expert opinion. But next, Elon Musk has gone to war with Keir Starmer over the riots sweeping the UK. So who's telling the truth about what's going on? The billionaire owner of X, or the Prime Minister? I've got a debate on this. Is founder of Fair Cop, Harry Miller, going head-to-head with the editor of newsleaf.com, Raza Hussain. And we will also, of course, be bringing you our big exclusive with Priti Patel. That's one not to be missed. Stay tuned.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new two-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness, and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life, and he's there to do it. I mean, we mustn't forget that in, I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like, and he also helped people who are selling the magazine.
Big Issue, no?
Yes, the Big Issue. And he's worked all day long with the same man twice now. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's, you know, and there will be a lot more, and he's been getting the money to do this, and I think it's he wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, coming up, are the police dragging their heels over the Manchester airport incident that sparked outrage just weeks ago? Heck of a lot of unanswered questions there, aren't there? But first, who is telling the truth about the riots? Elon Musk or Sir Keir Starmer? It's time now for the head-to-head. An almighty war of words has broken out between Elon Musk and the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, after Musk claimed on Monday that the violent riots sweeping the UK meant that, quote, civil war is inevitable. So the Prime Minister slammed the comments, claiming there was no justification for it. But the billionaire owner of X, formerly Twitter, hasn't backed down, has he? After hundreds of Muslim men violently attacked a pub and an individual man in Birmingham last night, Musk today took to the social media platform to ask the Prime Minister, why aren't all communities protected in Britain? He went on to brand Starmer two-tier Keir. So tonight I'm asking, who is telling the truth about what's really going on our streets? Is it Elon Musk or is it Keir Starmer? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/yoursay. Tweet me at GBNews. While you're there, go and vote in our poll. But first, going head-to-head on this, are the founder of Fair Cop, Harry Miller, and the editor of newsleaf.com, Raza Hussain. Both of you, thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Look, Harry, I'll start with you. You know, Elon Musk has been accused of being in charge of a platform that's been spouting fake news and inflaming tensions. You know, whose side are you on when it comes to this?
Well, I'm not entirely sure that Elon Musk is right when he says civil war is inevitable, because it's not inevitable in this country. We're English, after all. But he is correct when he calls Keir two-tier Keir. Without a shadow of a doubt, we have got a two-tier policing system and have had a two-tier policing system for many, many years. The reason that Fair Cop exists is to expose and to challenge this two-tier policing system. All of it is based upon one form or another of identity politics, be that race, be that religion, be that sexual orientation, or be that gender. Now, you are absolutely fine and safe in this country, providing you stick to the script. But the second you deviate from it, you can expect a knock on the door from a police officer. For instance, Lindsay Smith in Newcastle, a lesbian Newcastle United fan, had the gall to say that she was LGB, not LGBT. And two police officers came and threatened her with arrest because she had offended the teapot of the LGBT identity politics. Okay. Then it gets even worse. In Newcastle 2 weeks ago, the Chief Constable, Vanessa Jardine, marched together with a whole bunch of people who were calling for intifada, who were shouting no pride in genocide, and behind flags where they were waving Palestinian flags. Now, that is two-tier policing. You cannot march like that and claim the moral high ground.
All right, Harry, I'll come back to you. Raza, I'll bring you in now. I've just been told we do actually just have a little clip now of Keir Starmer being asked about Elon Musk, so we'll play that and I'll get your reaction off the back of it. So.
What's your message to Elon Musk?
Our first duty has to be to our communities to keep them safe. That is my sole focus.
OK, all right. So, Raza, do you think that Elon Musk has, I suppose, helped to keep communities unsafe, really?
Well, Elon Musk has done some great work when it comes to Tesla, SpaceX and Starlink. It's absolutely wrong with his recent comments. And he doesn't understand Britain's domestic politics, Britain's race relations and Britain's communities. For example, when was the last time he actually went to Southport, where the unfortunate stabbings took place? When was the last time he actually went to one of the places where some of the worst riots have been happening in the past, since the last decade? When was the last time he went to one of the places where some mosques have been attacked? His intervention just shows that he doesn't have the political knowledge of Britain. And Keir Starmer is right. Keir Starmer is right because he understands that there are certain communities that are under threat right now from rioters, from far-right thugs, and he's speaking the will of the British public. a YouGov poll today came out saying that most of British people say that the rioters should be described as thugs, rioters and racist. And when Keir Starmer made that press conference, that's what he was relaying to the British public. So Elon Musk should understand that because of the great work he has done in other areas of SpaceX and Tesla and Starlink, his sort of knowledge has certain restrictions.
Okay, all right, I'll come back to you as well. Harry, I'm just going to bring up on the screen now a couple of things that I think potentially might illustrate Elon Musk's points for him. So this was a report from the BBC after last night's incidents in Birmingham. Cars and pub attacks in Birmingham. Now, that basically failed to mention who was doing that attacking, right? And who was actually responsible for those incidents in a way that I don't think they would have done had that all been the far right. There's also a report from The Guardian that was an overview of some of the incidents that took place last night. They mentioned a few different bits and bobs there. They've got Belfast, they've got, in light of the Southport stabbings they mentioned, they've got Neil Basu, a former head of the counter-terror police, talking about, right-wing violence. They've got Plymouth there. They didn't mention Birmingham, right? Again, so there is an argument to say that you only get, the full truth, really, from Twitter, from X, Harry.
No, that's absolutely right. Twitter is a great voice for the marketplace. The reason that the liberal elite don't like it is because it gives the lumpen proletariat, the demos, the ordinary working class person, a voice in the nation. And that's why they don't like it, in all honesty. It's not that it's particularly dangerous, because there is as much truth to be found on Twitter as there is falsehood. That is the nature of a marketplace. Now, it would help if we had politicians who would tell us the truth. For instance, Keir Starmer seems absolutely incapable of seeing Islamist violence when it occurs. He's not the only one. We've had repeated politicians who have refused to see or name Islamist violence when it occurs. We have the obscene instance this week of a police officer addressing a crowd of Muslims and saying, please take your weapons away, leave them in the mosque, because you're not supposed to have them on the street. Can you imagine a police officer standing in front of a right-wing group and saying, guys, just leave your weapons down at Wetherspoons. You can pick them up later. It just wouldn't happen. And the politicians that we have are incapable of naming one of the problems. One of the problems is Islam.
OK, all right, that's your views, obviously. Raza, I'll bring you in on this now, because there is a point to be had there, isn't there? Which is that if there is a sense that a Prime Minister, a political class, actually, really, and real elements of the establishment media are unwilling to give us the full picture or name certain things, actually, that many people can see happening with their own eyes, then it does fall onto things like reactionary social media to get these video clips and to get that. My point being, if you just read The Guardian today, potentially, or you just looked at the BBC website last night, you actually would not have known who was doing some of the incidents in Birmingham. You could be forgiven for thinking it was only the far right out, And is that not where Elon Musk is right to be providing that platform?
I mean, most of the violence in the past few days have been staged by far-right thugs, as the Prime Minister said. You keep quoting the example of Birmingham. What happened in Birmingham was wrong. The police should deal with it. But the violence has been going on since the 30th of July. And that's where the focus should be right now. All violence is wrong. And what happened in Birmingham, as I said, is totally wrong. But here's what Elon Musk does. He brought back some of the people that were previously banned on Twitter. I myself have been subjected to far more xenophobia, racism and Islamophobia on Twitter compared to the previous ownership of the platform. The things he does not have a degree in British politics. He does not understand British politics. He's sitting at his keyboard typing away a few things, adding fuel to the fire. He just doesn't understand it. He should just sit it out, concentrate on his science and his innovative projects, and just let the adults in the room deal with it.
OK, look, both of you, thank you very, very much. It was a good head-to-head, that. And I think, you know, the point of agreement in all of it is I think we can all agree that we don't want to see any violence and we don't want to see any continuation of any nastiness on the streets of Britain or indeed anywhere else. So thank you very much, both of you. Look, who do you agree with there? Just Fed Up on X says, a bit of an easy question, that. Who would pick two-tier Keir? At least Elon tells the truth. Nick on X says, just imagine over 3 weeks ago Labour was considering national conscription and a war with Russia. The country at war with each other seems to have put an end to that as Labour struggles to hold the country together. All right, well, look, your verdict is in. So 95% of you, it must be said on X, think that Elon Musk is telling the truth in his social media spat with Sir Keir Starmer. 5% of you, of course, have sided with Sir Keir. Well, look, coming up, as Home Office Minister Jess Phillips blames these scenes in Birmingham on the far right.
Oh, the battery!
Is she appeasing elements of the Muslim vote in her community with double standards? Former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood gives his expert analysis on that shortly. Plus, Priti Patel reacts exclusively to those scenes in Birmingham.
What we saw last night, and I saw that footage in Birmingham, that's just outrageous and unacceptable. That was criminality and violence. But what was missing? Where were the pleas?
She also sets out her vision for the Conservative Party going forward, and she has an interesting message for both Nigel Farage and Suella Braverman. But also tonight, as a lawyer for the family at the centre of the Manchester airport incident make fresh allegations about police behaviour, why are the authorities taking so long to decide what to do? Former senior police officer in the Met, Kevin Hurley, gives us his expert analysis. That's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News.
Good evening. It's time for your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking further ahead, and there will be some rain at times for many of us as we go through Thursday and Friday, but for the time being, we're changing to something a bit cooler, a bit blustery and a bit showery because there's an area of low pressure to the northwest of the UK, and this is driving some showery bursts across parts of the UK. For many central and eastern parts of England and also eastern Scotland, it's actually going to be a largely dry night with some clear skies, but further west we have quite a few showers piling in, and some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side. Most notable perhaps in the south will be the fresher feel to things. Temperatures will be a good few degrees lower than they were last night, perhaps a bit more comfortable for sleeping. Taking a closer look at first thing tomorrow morning, then across much of central southern England, it's looking like a bright, fine start, but some showers across parts of the southwest and also some showers for parts of Wales as well, and northwest England too. Meanwhile, northeast England starting the day largely dry. Quite a few showers across Northern Ireland, but it's across Scotland where we're going to have the heaviest, most persistent rain, some showery rain making its way northeastwards as we go through the morning. This rain could cause some problems on the roads, could be some spray around, perhaps even a little bit of localised flooding. But it does clear away northwards as we go through the morning and breaks up, so just turning quite showery across Scotland and also across many northern and western parts through much of the day. Towards the south and east, you have a greater chance of avoiding those showers, and here we'll have the highest temperatures, highs of around 23, 24, so not quite as high as they have been recently. More wet weather to come as we go through towards the end of the week. There are a series of fronts waiting to come in from the west, so most of us will see some rain arriving as we go through Thursday, and there could be a bit more rain to come as we go through Friday as well. All the time it's likely to be quite blustery or breezy, and so that will add to the relatively cool feel to things considering it is August. Bye-bye.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody
in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Well, coming up is Jess Phillips trying to appease the Muslim vote with her tweets about rioters in Birmingham. We do discuss that with Priti Patel in an exclusive interview that's coming your way shortly. But first, lawyers for the family at the centre of the Manchester airport incident have now made fresh allegations about the police in a press conference held earlier today. So, Fahir Ahmad was struck on the head by a firearms officer at Manchester airport after he and his brother Ahmad were arrested. The clip sparked outrage, leading to the suspension of the officer, who is still facing a criminal investigation over the incident. But then, obviously, as we all know now, a second leaked clip subsequently emerged, didn't it? Which showed the brothers appearing to throw punches at the police, etc. And today, their lawyer, Aamer Anwar, said that there had been a deliberate attempt to smear them.
Has been a deliberate attempt to smear the family. The family have been subjected to horrific racist and Islamophobic abuse on social media. And there has been a campaign of disinformation in an attempt to justify alleged police violence. As far as we are aware, there have been no proactive attempts by the GMP to monitor or to investigate the further hate crimes perpetrated against this family.
All right, lots to go at here. I'm joined now by a former senior police officer in the Met Police, Kevin Hurley. Kevin, look, I'm going to ask a question that I think probably most people are asking. Right? Why haven't these two brothers been charged? And what's going on there? You know, it's been a while. We've seen some footage. Why haven't they been charged?
I can't answer that, quite frankly. It's a no-brainer. The evidence is absolutely solid of the main protagonist, the poor innocent one with the boxer's broken nose, who managed to punch two policewomen, break one's nose, and then punch a policeman in the back of the head and strangle him to the floor. It's as clear as face and, as your face or whatever, that the guy did it. I mean, what's going on, and this is an interesting thing for me about this particular lawyer, Anwar, is quite recently he was on video saying from the river to the sea demonstration pro-Gaza. So why is this lawyer choosing at this volatile moment to start to stoke up allegations of racism and anti-police behaviour? What is his game right now to do this? There's no need for him to do this press conference at this volatile time. Is he trying to create some narrative about the fact that Muslims are hard done by? I think he should really reflect upon, if he's going to do his press conference, he waits until things settle down, because this is a very volatile thing he's doing, particularly in the light of the fact that he himself is on media saying from the river to the sea.
Right, okay, fine. Okay, a couple of things. I don't necessarily disbelieve you. I personally haven't seen that, so, there is that side of it. The other aspect to it, I suppose, is some people will say, well, he's a lawyer and he's doing his job. My concern, I suppose, with it is how on earth Greater Manchester Police have managed to lose the narrative on this not once but twice, right? Because there's been a void that's been filled here, hasn't there? And do you think, with your police expert head on, right, do you think that there is a worry going on at the moment with Greater Manchester Police or at the CPS, I don't know, where they're thinking, well, if we do charge people, then that could inflame tensions in the community? Do you think that that will be having an impact on them?
Yes, of course. And you could see that with the original incident, where they knew full well there were other videos, and yet they still took the decision to suspend that officer, who, in my judgment, having been in many physical confrontations, was the hero of the day in neutralising two people who'd already taken out two female firearms officers. He took command, that guy. He was the one in charge. Fair play to him. But what they did is, instead of saying, well, we'll wait and see, They took the decision to suspend him. And now the Crown Prosecution Service, as usual, are showing their, I might call, attempt to kowtow to the media, certain elements of the media, kowtow to certain pressure groups, and not charge these guys. They should have been charged straight away with assault.
I mean, the other aspect, look, the other aspect to this is that there is a police officer who's still under investigation, and they don't appear to be quick to charge him either. And here we are now, however long it is since this incident took place, and it keeps rearing its head. You had, you know, the lawyer Ahmed Yaqub initially, and then they look like they've binned him and replaced him with someone who, you know, whether or not people, you know, like what he's saying, at least appears a lot more slicker and in control of his brief, doesn't he? And he's doing his job there. He's calling a press conference. He's doing all of this stuff. You know, so it's staying in the news without any form of resolution. And, yeah, I don't know, I just find it a bit odd, especially in light of the comments that we've just had from Keir Starmer, literally moments ago, about how, you know, if you commit violence, if you know, riot, if you do whatever, you can expect to be in court and sentenced within a week. I find that a bit odd, Kevin.
Well, I agree with you, but I suppose the other argument, as you rightly say, is they're trying to investigate all the facts. And it depends if they're going to take their one little section, which is there a prima facie case to charge these two with assault of police and one with certainly ABH from the policewoman. It's absolutely solid. It is there. So one does wonder about that. But the other thing is, although the lawyer looks slick, I know what's on social media, and indeed you've got it there. He's there saying from the river to the sea, shouting and winding up crowds. So there's another point here worth researching. What exactly is that lawyer's game, other than be a slick lawyer representing his clients to start this at this particular volatile moment?
All right. OK, look, Kevin, thank you very, very much for coming on the show. I will reiterate again, you know, all right, I haven't seen that video. The lawyer is not here to defend himself when it comes to that. And it is an ongoing investigation on both sides. I think my main point here, the main questions that I would quite like answered, and I think we did get some answers there, were about why is there this void, and how have Greater Manchester Police apparently managed to lose the narrative not once but twice on this particular incident. But that was former senior police officer there in the Met Police, Kevin Hurley. Thank you very, very much. Coming up, my exclusive interview with Priti Patel, her first on TV since announcing that she's running for leader, and she doesn't hold back. Done differently to Yvette Cooper.
So there's quite a lot.
Well, it turns out there is quite a lot, actually. I'll tell you exactly what she said shortly. But next, after these scenes in Birmingham last night... Was the Home Office Minister, Jess Phillips, trying to appease aspects of the Muslim vote with her tweets excusing Asian rioters in Birmingham, or at least appearing to, anyway? Labour's, LBC's former political editor, Theo Usherwood, is live next, and we've got a lot to go at. Stay tuned.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
We're joined now by GB News national reporter Charlie Peters, who is outside Buckingham Palace for us.
Well, let's start with the expenditure, shall we? From the last year, it was £89.1 million. That's what the royal household spent. And one of the core parts of that expenditure was, of course, their big event last May, the coronation. £800,000 went into that. And then we should look at the engagements. You mentioned the number that King Charles made last year. Well, £4.2 million on those engagements, much of that travel. And then finally, how much that costs us all? Well, it's £1.29 per person. That's the cost of the monarchy to the taxpayer. But that really hides the truth of how that cash comes about, because all of the money that the royal household spends is actually theirs being given back to them by the Treasury. It comes from the Crown Estate surplus. That's a £16 billion portfolio they have, and their sovereign grant is made up of the surplus from 2 years prior. So in the year to 2022, there was about £350 million knocking around from the surplus. That was given all to the Treasury, and they were given back 15% as their core sovereign grant. Additional 10% was given towards the resurfacing of Buckingham Palace. That's been going on since Parliament voted on it in 2017. It's expected to take 10 years. But all in all, that's been about £86.3 million. And as you heard, the expenditure was £89 million. So how do they mix that gap? How do they close that gap in and cost out? Well, they make their own money as well from additional sources of income. And that was the gates, the receipts to Windsor Castle and their many palaces across the country, where people have paid about £10 million to visit in the last year.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News. Now, the disorder spreading across the country did hit Birmingham last night, and a Sky News reporter was forced off air by a group of aggressive protesters.
Community leaders have been speaking to the police as well because...
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Right, I think, apologies for the language you're hearing, but a sense of the anger, I think you can hear there.
Yeah, Katie, I think Becky...
Yeah, and many were quick to condemn the violence in Birmingham and the disorder, but Home Office Minister Jess Phillips said this. To be clear, all day rumours have been spread that a far-right group were coming, and it was done entirely to get Muslim people out on the street to drive this content. It's misinformation being spread to cause trouble. I'll be bringing you an exclusive interview with Priti Patel in a few short minutes. Here's a sneak peek of her response to Jess Phillips.
So I would say to every elected politician and to government ministers as well, you know, we have a duty and a responsibility to look at our conduct, the language that we use. We shouldn't be giving, ministers definitely should not be giving running commentary through social media platforms, not from a department like that. And, you know, again, I come back to the whole issue. We need to know the full facts, and it's not for government ministers to be opining or giving commentary on social media. Okay. It all adds to the wrong perceptions, and it is deeply unhelpful.
Well, joining me now in the studio is former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood. Now, Theo, Jess Phillips serves a constituency with a large Muslim population, and, in fact, she very nearly lost, actually, to a candidate from the Workers' Party of Britain. Is she simply trying to appease, do you think, some of her own voters with these tweets?
No. So the issue is, and what Priti Patel alludes to in that interview, is that obviously Jess Phillips is a government minister in the Home Office. So that is a sensitive position. She is also the MP for Birmingham Yardley. And just to give you the context, she had a majority of nearly 11,000 before the last election, and that went down. There was an independent candidate, and that went down to just under 1,000 as a result. So that's the background to it. And I think what Jess Phillips was trying to do was to try and explain why people had come out in that particular area of Birmingham because they were scared. And I think and to be fair to the Muslim community, and I carry no candle for any, I try to be as impartial as I can, you know me, Patrick, right? But just as we have a conversation about resentment amongst white working class people and reasons for the violence, and you can have an argument about whether that's legitimate or not, I think it is only fair to the Muslim community in this country that when we have scenes like this, that there is potentially, you know, we have the capacity to have a conversation about why that might have happened. That is not to excuse in any way, shape or form the scenes that we see in that particular video there. And also there have been some reports of tyres being slashed on media vehicles, and there's another video of somebody being beaten up. Not at all. But I think from what I've picked up, and I'm preparing for a series series of interviews I'm doing at the weekend for a separate show, what I picked up is that people in that particular area of Birmingham are scared and they are frightened, and they don't necessarily trust the police, given what they have seen elsewhere in the country, to protect them.
Okay.
And I think that is worrying. And I think what Jess Phillips was trying to do was to say, people are worried, and that's why they came out. And I think there is a particular issue in that. The second issue, I think, is that you can take two views on this. You can either say that this is an organic, what we're seeing, the riots we've seen in England are either organic, they're coming from the bottom up. People are unhappy and they're resentful, and they're rising up, and then they're having these riots, and we're seeing the violence we're seeing. Or you can say that actually this is controlled from the top down. We're seeing misinformation disseminated through Telegram, through WhatsApp and other platforms, social media like X, down to people, and that's what's causing the problem. And if you take the latter view, and I think the evidence is that it is the latter view, then that's about spreading misinformation to create a war. Because you can, if you push one side, that's fine, but the way you create sustained violence is to push both sides.
I do get that. I do think that there are legitimate concerns about how ready people are to tool up as well, though. And that is something that I think, you know, it's one thing saying that people are fearful of what might go on, they might not feel protected by police. It's another thing to say, well, you know, I'm going to get on a bike and bring a machete with me and go out with my mates.
Absolutely, I completely understand that. And I think that's where, you know, that's where things spill over, and that's why we are in this absolutely tragic situation in this country of seeing the levels of violence we're seeing. And that's why I think Priti Patel, when she makes those comments, has a point about how we have to be very careful of the language. And Keir Starmer has been very careful of his language so as not to give any green light to the violence, because as soon as you say to people, actually, there's some justification, there's some way, you know, some reason that you have to do this, then of course that's just saying, well, go ahead and
and of course in that it brings us on to the next topic, which is this, you know, two-tier Keir situation that has reared its head, right? So he's been branded that over his, some would say, muddled response to the riots affecting towns, cities across the country, and it is beginning to affect his popularity. So according to an opinion poll published this week, the Prime Minister's net approval rating has collapsed by 16 points since winning the election. Do you think his handling of these riots really, you know, is affecting him, right?
Yeah, of course it's going to affect him in the polls. I think there's two questions, and I almost think the question about two-tier policing is actually an aside. Put that to one side. He needs to get on top of this really quickly, and at the moment, because he doesn't want to inflame tensions, he's only resorting to the toolbook that he can remember from when he was department-led public prosecutions, director of public prosecutions in 2011, courts sitting night and day, extra resources for the police. But, you know, what I think is potentially much more worrying are these, you know, these travel warnings that countries are giving, like Malaysia and Australia, warning people not to come to the UK. Could we see large foreign investors? And Keir Starmer is going for economic growth, right? He wants people to invest in this country, to see Britain as a home, somewhere where they are safe, it's a safe haven. We had those comments after the election that actually Britain could stand out against the rest of Europe because it had a stable Labour government. And I think there's a real danger that unless he gets on top of this really quickly, that this comes to define a significant proportion of his 5 years in office, because he won't be able to do all of the other things. We've got Rachel Reeves in New York trying to secure foreign investment. Do you think those New York bankers are thinking, oh, well, looking at scenes of UK, this is just the place we want to put our money? I don't think so. And that's a real problem that I don't think has been fully appreciated yet.
No, absolutely, and you're right to raise it, and thank you for doing that. Theo, great stuff, as Theo with that. Right, Keir Starmer's handling of this riots, well, they're going to overshadow it. We'll talk a bit about that. But coming up, my exclusive interview with Priti Patel, her first TV sit-down since announcing her Tory leadership bid. Now, she doesn't hold back on some of Labour's responses.
I'd be cancelling, for example, annual leave. Look at the scale of what we're seeing. I'd be making sure we're asking the right questions. Have the police got all the resources that they need?
She's also got a message for Suella Braverman, Robert Jenrick and Nigel Farage. Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, it's time for your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking further ahead, and there will be some rain at times for many of us as we go through Thursday and Friday, but for the time being we're changing to something a bit cooler, a bit blustery and a bit showery because there's an area of low pressure to the northwest of the UK, and this is driving some showery bursts across parts of the UK. For many central and eastern parts of England and also eastern Scotland, it's actually going to be a largely dry night with some clear skies, but further west we have quite a few showers piling in, and some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side. Most notable perhaps in the south will be the fresher feel to things. Temperatures will be a good few degrees lower than they were last night, perhaps a bit more comfortable for sleeping. Taking a closer look at first thing tomorrow morning, then across much of central southern England it's looking like a bright fine start, but some showers across parts of the southwest and also some showers for parts of Wales as well, and northwest England too. Meanwhile, northeast England starting the day largely dry. Quite a few showers across Northern Ireland, but it's across Scotland where we're going to have the heaviest, most persistent rain, some showery rain making its way northeastwards as we go through the morning. This rain could cause some problems on the roads, could be some spray around, perhaps even a little bit of localised flooding, but it does clear away northwards as we go through the morning and breaks up, so just turning quite showery across Scotland and also across many northern and western parts through much of the day. Towards the south and east you have a greater chance of avoiding those showers, and here we'll have the highest temperatures, highs of around 23, 24, so not quite as high as they have been recently. More wet weather to come as we go through towards the end of the week. There are a series of fronts waiting to come in from the west, so most of us will see some rain arriving as we go through Thursday, and there could be a bit more rain to come as we go through Friday as well. All the time it's likely to be quite blustery or breezy, and so that will add to the relatively cool feel to things considering it is August. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
Oh, the battery!
After scenes like that, I have the first TV interview with Priti Patel since she announced that she's running for the Tory leadership, and she doesn't hold back.
What we saw last night, and I saw that footage in Birmingham, that's just outrageous and unacceptable. That was criminality and violence. But what was missing? Where were the police?
And she's scathing about the people in charge.
This is why we have to have the questions, the scrutiny to the Home Secretary and to Keir Starmer.
Plus, she discusses Nigel Farage and whether she thinks that Suella Braverman should stay in the Tory party. Don't miss it. Also this hour, transgender madness at home as a 5-year-old is on a waiting list for NHS gender care, and
God willing, this crisis will culminate in a gold medal, and that would be the best response.
gender madness abroad too, as the boxer accused of being a man beating up women won her latest bout apparently just moments ago. So they're into the gold medal match. Great stuff, that's progress, isn't it? I've got tomorrow's front pages with broadcaster and columnist Esther Krakow. I've got the director at the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, and ex-Labour advisor Matthew Larser. And you're going to have to look closely here, OK? Who is this potentially very famous face spotted in the background there at the Plymouth protest? Can you tell me who you think that might be? Get ready, Britain, here we go. Priti Patel on the riots, on Nigel Farage, on Suella Braverman and her vision for the Tory party. Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines from the GB Newsroom. It's just gone 10 o'clock. The Prime Minister has promised communities will be safe after he chaired an emergency COBRA meeting on efforts to tackle the unrest. Speaking moments ago, Sir Keir Starmer said those taking part in the unrest will feel the full force of the law.
The meeting was to coordinate our response to the disorder, and I made it very clear on a number of occasions that those involved will feel the full force of the law. So we coordinated, we went through some of the numbers. Over 400 people now have been arrested, 100 have been charged, some in relation to online activity, and a number of them are already in court. And I'm now expecting substantive sentencing before the end of this week. That should send a very powerful message.
Meanwhile, suspects have appeared in court after a week of violence in the UK sparked by the stabbings in Southport. Among them, a child aged just 15 who arrived before magistrates in Liverpool with his mother after being identified from a TikTok video. Meanwhile, a man has become the first suspect to be convicted of stirring up racial hatred during the riots after posting messages on Facebook. 100 people have been charged and more than 400 arrested so far. And police have also appealed for video footage of any criminality, including an attack on a car during a counter-protest staged in Birmingham last night. Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed the news that children injured in the attack that last week have been discharged from hospital. The Prime Minister also thanked staff at Alderhay Hospital in Liverpool. 3 children, 7-year-old Elsie Stancoombe, 9-year-old Alice Aguiar and 6-year-old BB King died as a result of the attack at the Heart Space Community Centre. A vigil is being held in memory of one of the girls, Alice Aguiar, in Southport tonight. And a solicitor of a man who was kicked in the head by a police officer at Manchester Airport says the family is the victim of a smear campaign. Aamer Anwar says Fahir Ahmaz's mother was racially abused on a plane before the events of last month. He's also accused officers of not having body cams turned on during the incident. And in the US, Kamala Harris has picked Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate for November's presidential election. The Democratic Party candidate confirmed the news on X. Mr. Walz, who is a former teacher and member of the US Army National Guard, responded to the news, saying it was an honour of a lifetime to join the campaign. Harris will hope the Democrat, who served more than a decade in Congress, can help shore up her campaign in the critical upper Midwest region. The decision will be pivotal as Harris prepares to challenge Donald Trump in the upcoming election following President Biden's exit from the race. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's time now for the first part of my exclusive interview with Dame Priti Patel. Now, of course, she is standing to be the next Conservative leader and she wants to set out her vision for the Conservative Party. But as a former high-profile Home Secretary, I think it would have been remiss of me if we didn't first address the riots and also some issues when it comes to immigration. I started by asking Ms Patel if the Prime Minister has actually made things worse with his response.
So what we're seeing is incredibly serious, and we also should remember, Patrick, that 3 girls lost their life last week in the most horrific murders, and our thoughts should be with the families and the victims, first of all. However, what we are seeing, it's now over a week where we're seeing disruption, criminality, violence, thuggery across the streets of Britain. That's unacceptable. You will know, your viewers also will know this too, I've called for the recall of Parliament. It's summer recess right now, and I absolutely believe that we need to be holding the government to account, asking important questions of the government on a whole raft of issues, such as the policing of these particular protests, but at the same time, really be, standing up for many of these communities that have been affected really badly.
OK, I mean, you were Home Secretary for a number of years. What would you have done differently to Yvette Cooper?
So there's quite a lot. Don't forget, during my time as Home Secretary, we had the pandemic, we had BLM protests and all sorts of things going on. This is a difficult time for the Home Secretary, but I can tell you, and this is why I think it's important we should recall Parliament, I think she needs to be asked directly, what discussions has she been having with the police? You've asked me what I would do differently. Well, I would have spoken to every chief constable across the country, England and Wales. I would have been holding operational calls to hear directly from them the type of planning and the processes that they put in place to make sure that protests will be policed properly. I'd be cancelling, for example, annual leave. Look at the scale of what we're seeing. I'd be making sure we're asking the right questions. Have the police got all the resources that they need? There's a really important point here as well, though, Patrick. The police are accountable to the public, and the way in which we hold them to account is through Parliament, it's through our Home Secretary. This is why I do believe Parliament needs to be recalled. These are fundamental questions we should be asking of the government.
Do you think they're scared of that accountability then? Is that the implication?
So I wouldn't say that, no. I mean, to be quite frank, look at the country right now, look at the towns and cities that are being affected and the protests and the level of disruption and violence that we're seeing. I have I genuinely think that the government are doing everything that they possibly can. But we have to also ensure that the police have the tools, the resources, the capability, the skills to be doing this for very, very good reasons. I mean, we're seeing all sorts of horrendous footage. It is totally unacceptable. The level of criminality that's taking place, crime is crime. We are seeing crime and disorder across our country. That needs to be addressed. Government is speaking in tough terms about sentences and what will happen to these individuals and the criminals and the thugs, but we still need to be pressing the government to answer questions about policing in this country and what has been going on.
You mentioned there that the government is speaking in very strong terms. Keir Starmer does stand accused of being two-tier in his rhetoric. Nigel Farage certainly thinks that he's being two-tier. Millions of other people do think that he's being two-tier as well. Do you think that police and politicians are more afraid of tackling Muslim gangs than other groups?
Well, that should not be the case, full stop. And you've asked an important question. And you've asked a question which tells me that that is the perception. And the fact that even that perception exists right now, we don't know the real facts, right? This is, again, why we need to be asking questions of the government. The fact that that perception exists undermines public trust and confidence in our police. That's not a good place to be. And I've worked very hard against that. I really have. This is why we have to have the questions, the scrutiny to the Home Secretary and to Keir Starmer, because actually the police need to have the tools, the equipment, the backing to police in the right way across all protests. Doesn't matter who, but literally all the protests where we're seeing thuggery, violence, criminality. Everyone that's involved in that, these protests should be policed. I've seen footage on television, I'm sure you have as well. I saw some on social media last night from one part of the country where I saw no police. I want to know why that was. Why was there no police presence? These are the types of questions that need to be asked. This is why we need to be holding the government to account. I say this actually as an opposition backbench MP as well, that's our job, our responsibility and duty to the country and to the public to be asking these questions of the government, which is why I will say this, Parliament should be recalled. There'll be so many people, the public are fearful right now. It's disgraceful what's going on. This is our amazing country. And look at our reputation in the world right now when people are looking in on our country and seeing all of this. This has to be tackled, and the police need to police every protest, deal with the criminals involved. Criminality is criminality. There's no interpretation there. The people that are throwing bricks, burning buildings, tackling, targeting mosques, for example, but even holding weapons and threatening people, that is criminal behaviour. They need to be arrested, and the police should be doing that across the board.
If you were in power, because, this is important because you presumably hope to be Prime Minister one day, would you have mentioned things like Hare Hills? Would you have mentioned things like what we saw in Rochdale? Would you have mentioned things like what we saw last night in Birmingham with gangs of British Asian men walking around the streets and beating people up outside pubs? Would you have given equal weight to that as what we've seen from the horrific far-right stuff?
Absolutely, across the board.
Right.
Across the board. No fear or favour across the board. We believe in the rule of law in this country, not the rule of the mob. End of story. What we saw last night, and I saw that footage in Birmingham, that's just outrageous and unacceptable. That was criminality and violence. But what was missing? Where were the police? Now, I don't know the full facts behind this, so I don't want to go into any speculation whatsoever. But again, in the absence of the facts, the government needs to be answering these questions in Parliament. As I said, the police are held to account in Parliament. Should be held to account, basically, through the Home Secretary of the day. And the only mechanism we have to do that is through Parliament.
OK, so that was one aspect of the interview with Dame Priti Patel there. In the next bit, we do talk a little bit about Operation Scatter, that is potentially doing the rounds as well. Labour dispersing asylum seekers around the country. What would her view on that be? But also, crucially, her vision for what she wants the Conservative Party to look like if she wins that leadership election. And there is a lot to go out there. She talks about Nigel Farage. She talks as well about Suella Braverman. She also puts her case forward about why she is the best person for the job. Let's get the thoughts now on what we've just heard from our panel. Columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity Stephen Wolfe, and ex-Labour advisor Matthew Larser. Matthew, I will start with you on this. Keir Starmer's not recalling Parliament here. Is he running scared?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think it's always a finely balanced decision about whether or not to recall Parliament. I think at the moment there isn't the need to do so. Let's see how the situation develops. Parliament was sitting last week. It was able to respond to what happened in Southport. And so, let's see what happened. It's an easy... I mean, you can't blame Priti Patel for wanting to get a headline by joining the calls for recalling Parliament. Two of her leadership rivals, if the Tory leadership, don't think Parliament should be recalled either at the moment. So it's a finely balanced decision at the moment. I don't think there's a need to do that. Let's see what happens. Hopefully tonight is quieter, and let's hope that we have quieter nights to come as well. And then, with Parliament, be able to reflect on this with a calm head. Yeah, I mean, on that, there are, as I'm sure everyone's aware here, huge concerns about tomorrow night for a variety of different reasons, but we can talk about that another time. Stephen, do you think that at the moment we cannot have proper scrutiny of our Home Secretary and our Prime Minister's response because we don't have Parliament? We just have little sound bites from Keir Starmer after a Cobra meeting.
Yeah, the only scrutiny seems to be coming from Twitter or X, whereas our politicians should have the right to be able to come out and challenge the view, whether it is two-tier Keir, as we're saying. I mean, I get confused by this line about two-tier policing, because we've had two-tier policing for years. Everybody visibly knows what happens when you see the Black Lives Matter movement being able to pull down statues and everyone's kneeling, and yet we'll go after football thugs, to be honest. When we see what's happening on the...
Stephen, they went to court. They weren't ignored. There wasn't two-tier policing. The people who pulled down the statue in Bristol went to court and they were prosecuted.
I was watching what was going on.
They were then let off by the court, but there wasn't two-tier policing.
I physically watched what happened in London, to be honest, where you saw thousands of people causing trouble. I saw Antifa out there attacking other groups, and they got left alone. Okay. Two-tier policing is something that's happened, and it's been established, unfortunately, throughout the UK for a long period of time, despite the fact we try to argue it isn't there. We try to argue it's fair, but people know there's a difference.
Okay,
and I think the thing is, perception is reality. If you've had in London months of protests on weekends where you had Jewish owners, shop owners on the weekends, which are usually their busiest days, saying we're not opening our shops because we have people, albeit a minority of these protesters, shouting hateful anti-Semitic things. You have Jewish groups across the country saying we feel unsafe. And I say this knowing that Keir Starmer himself is Jewish and must, on some level, have felt uncomfortable about this. And nothing was done about them. They were just being, treated with kid gloves. Again, you may say there's no two-tier policing, but perception is reality. You cannot argue that that looks good to anyone. You cannot argue
It's perception of Elon Musk, who doesn't even live in this country. We've just had a general election where the Conservative Party was absolutely massacred.
Why don't you answer the point that I've just made about these protests that went on?
Why don't people on the right accept we've just had a general election where the Labour government has just won?
On the right.
We do. We're still talking about
You don't.
Is there? Of course they've won, and I've been a critic of the Conservative Party just as much as I will be a critic of the Labour Party when they get things wrong. And on this particular issue, they've got it wrong. And the way that he came out in his statement wasn't.
Well, there is not two-tier policing in the country. It's being the idea there is being it's hyped up by people for their own purposes. Of course it is. It's all yes, and because you've got run out of arguments.
Now is actually losing its stigma, just as the way that you used to say people are racist because they considered issues about immigration.
Well,
it's losing.
What's two-tier, Stephen? About a tweet from the Lord Chancellor and Justice Secretary saying it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter what your argument, what you think your motivation is, the rules need to be applied, the law needs to be applied equally to anybody who's wearing a balaclava and rain.
That is the fact that we can see it wasn't applied. And here's the thing.
Well, where hasn't it been applied?
I just told you about the pro-Palestine marches where there were loads of Jewish people in this country saying they felt unsafe.
On the pro-Palestine.
There were Jewish business owners that said they had to close their shops in London on Saturdays because the busiest days of the year for them because they felt unsafe. There were people that...
On the pro-Palestine marches, charges after charges have been...
But the point here is there is a perception, a very valid perception, that those concerns were not treated as seriously. And you can shout far-right propaganda as much as you want, but there are people that are going to say, I don't care what you say, this is what the reality is.
This is what we're seeing.
That's the point.
Final word to you on this, Matthew, just based on what Priti Patel had to say as well. Should Yvette Cooper be doing more here when it comes to, cancelling police officers' leave, getting them back, doing all of that stuff?
Well, they're perfectly reasonable points to make. I mean, what, for example, the government said today is it will cover extra costs for overtime and for cancelling rest days for police. Clearly, if the situation continues, then cancelling annual leave may become an option too. But that's going to be covered centrally, so it doesn't take away from local police budgets.
All right. Now, look, there is another bit of this Priti Patel interview to bring to you. It's quite wide-ranging. We do talk about the immigration issue as well, illegal immigration, that is. She doubles down as well on her criticism of Nigel Farage.
Nigel's a long-standing friend of mine. I've known Nigel for a long time. And, I could debate with him, discuss issues with him, and I'm happy to do that. And you've asked me about Nigel's language. It's no different to what I said about Jess Phillips right now. We're all democratically elected politicians. We should know the full facts, and we need to be careful about the language that we use publicly, particularly at a very sensitive time like now.
And the former Home Secretary tells us all why she should be the next Tory leader. And it's straight after this.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
An employment tribunal has found that a senior lawyer telling a legal secretary that she looked nice created an intimidating environment and made her feel violated.
Well, she's won her sexual harassment suit, so is saying someone looks nice acceptable in the workplace anymore?
Well, joining us now to debate this is political commentator Christine Hamilton, who thinks it should be, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid, who thinks making comments like these are unnecessary. OK, Rebecca, why is it unnecessary to tell your colleague they look nice?
Well, how somebody looks at work shouldn't be particularly important or relevant, but I think my issue here is that it's used as a sort of dismissive way to make women feel silly for complaining about things. Like, oh, it's just saying you look nice, why does it matter? But we all know there are different ways of saying things, and if you are an older man in a position of power, looking a woman up and down and saying, oh, you look nice, in a lascivious tone, which, as far as we know, is quite possibly what happened, that's not acceptable, that's not workplace appropriate, and it would make somebody feel uncomfortable.
Christine, she's right, Rebecca, isn't she? It depends how it's said. If you've got someone who's sleazy saying, oh, you look nice, you're going to be a bit off-put, aren't you?
Yes, we don't know whether this was said in a lascivious tone or not, and as far as I can see this particular case, the boss went too far and he did a lot of other things as well. But what worries me is that the tribunal has ruled that just saying you look nice could be included as sexual harassment. Now, I think that is ridiculous.
Realistically, women don't make these accusations for fun. Women don't make these accusations to be difficult. They do it because they've been made to feel unsafe or unable to work in a certain place.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News. Now, I'm about to bring you part 2 of my exclusive sit-down with Dame Priti Patel. She is standing to be the next Tory leader. She's not done a TV interview about this before. Now, one would presume that in order to win, she will have to convince the Tory membership of her plan to reduce mass immigration and illegal immigration. So I did start by asking if she agreed with Labour's reported scheme to end the use of large military sites to house illegal migrants and instead scatter them across Britain. Here's her response.
Well, it's the wrong approach. It's not just a bad idea, it's the wrong approach. This basically means that our incredible local authorities, our local councils, will effectively need to now, deal with this issue. And, Patrick, you will know, we didn't get everything right in the last government, there's no doubt about that, and that was demonstrated at the ballot box recently. But we had proposals and plans to have reception and detention centres. The crucial thing is that individuals who come to our country illegally, they need to be treated differently. And we need deterrents, such as reception centres, detention centres, so that we can actually then have the fast-track removal of these individuals. That is crucial. That was government policy, as you recall, certainly when I was Home Secretary. I absolutely think that is the way we should be going forward. Detained sites, reception centres, so we have that distinction. We should not be having this policy of dispersal, and this will put significant pressures onto local councils.
Quite keen to get a flavour of what Priti Patel's Conservative Party would look like going forward, really. Now, we have had some noises from the likes of Suella Braverman who've said she doesn't want to be forced to leave. She's been called things like mad and crazy and other names for having the concerns that she's got. If you were leader, would you be particularly annoyed if she did decide to join Reform?
Well, first of all, I would not want to see that happen. Let me just be clear about that. And, I am standing in this leadership contest. I think this is a crucial moment for my party, the Conservative and Unionist Party. I have a lot of experience in the party. I've been a member for 30 years, and I absolutely believe that I'm one of the strongest candidates to bring people together and unite people. And I can say that because, having been a member for 30 years, I've been consistent in my views, my beliefs, my values. I'm not a politician that's had to go on a journey to rediscover myself or my views. People know what they get with me. Unity has to be at the crux, the centre of how we go forward as a party. And I say that to all colleagues. Look at the result of the general election. The public voted against us. We were disunited. We failed to deliver. And so I want to see us, number one, come together, but also start to work together to reform the party. So that's our party, our structures, the way we campaign, the way we engage, even our grassroots, how we stand up and become, I want us to become the largest party in local government all over again. We've moved away from that over the last 2 years. But with that, we should be standing up for conservative values and beliefs. And I absolutely think that is a very significant area where every Conservative Member of Parliament and our grassroots members can unite around that. And we therefore develop the right policies in due course through those conservative values and beliefs. Being patriots of our country, standing up for law and order. I've never shied away from all that. Yes, learning lessons around immigration, controlling immigration, looking at the levers that the government actually does have, and we could have one day again through the systems that, by the way, we put in place and the laws that we put in place, and it's the same across the board as well. But actually freedom, the freedom to succeed, economic opportunity, these are all conservative values, and I want us to be back there again as a united party, actually standing up for them. Conservatism hasn't failed, it has not. And I absolutely believe that this is where we need to come together and stand up for who we are and demonstrate to the British people our views are their views, and actually we can represent the hard-working silent majority of our country.
Look, silent majority, you mentioned there. With respect, I do wonder if you've gone on a slight journey yourself. I mean, there were clips at the last Tory party conference of, being quite pally with Nigel Farage, for example. I think you've recently condemned some of his rhetoric, especially around the riot. So what would a Priti Patel Conservative party look like in relation to Nigel Farage? Would you continue to condemn his language? Would you welcome him in? How would you go about
Patrick,
it?
First of all, I haven't gone on a journey. I've been consistent for 30 years in my views, my values and my beliefs. I'm a Conservative. I'm an absolute Conservative. I think when it comes to, you've asked about Nigel. Nigel's a long-standing friend of mine. I've known Nigel for a long time. And, I could debate with him, discuss issues with him, and I'm happy to do that. Let's not forget, the Conservative Party has lost the general election. And with that, Reform are a party that stood against Conservative candidates at the general election. They were part of us losing the election. We lost amazing, decent public servants at this general election, which is a shame. So, I believe that, Reform is a party that, we will challenge, oppose. There might be times in parliamentary party debate, I don't know, in Parliament, where they seek to side with us. Who knows, right? That's for Parliament in the future. And you've asked me about Nigel's language. It's no different to what I said about Jess Phillips right now. We're all democratically elected politicians. We should know the full facts, and we need to be careful about the language that we use publicly, particularly at a very sensitive time like now. There's a lot of misinformation. We haven't even had a conversation yet about the misinformation, social media platforms, etc. I know from our policing authorities, police forces around the country, I've seen it. I've had the inside track, the privilege of knowing and understanding how this works. The police will be watching what goes on. The national
would you be getting stuff on Elon Musk then?
So just a second. The national policing lead for protests from the lead chief constable in the country has publicly said that misinformation has played a huge factor in all of this. That is really important. You've asked about Elon Musk. I mean, getting into spats with Elon Musk, I think, is obviously not the right way forward. Right now, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of our country, needs to come to Parliament, be asked the questions, give the leadership that is needed on, being accountable, transparent and dealing with this awful, awful situation. And, we need to make sure that the police, as I've said, are doing what they need to do. But importantly, Patrick, our streets are not safe right now. Public safety comes first, and we've got to put the public safety of the British people front and centre of everything that we do.
OK. In order to do all of this, in order to sell your vision, which you've just done there, of what the Conservative Party would look like under Priti Patel, you are going to have to fight off a couple of people. Robert Jenrick was described as the favourite earlier today. I'm sure you would disagree, but he was described as the favourite earlier today. Why are you better than him?
Well, as I've said, my skills, my experience, I'm a long-standing Conservative, and yes, I've worked in governments, in many departments. I do absolutely think, the job of being leader of the opposition is challenging. It comes with all sorts of challenges, and you need experience. You need the strength of that experience and the ability to carry colleagues with you and to work with colleagues as well. People have known me for a long time. They know I'm not someone that sort of changed my views or my positions. I am consistent, and I'm a conservative, a full-blooded conservative in that sense. And I believe that I can bring my skills, my experience, unity and strength into play to challenge the government, to be a robust leader of the opposition. I can tell you now, I don't want a Labour government to be more than a one-term Labour government, and I believe with my leadership, we can absolutely challenge them and hold them to account and get our party match fit all over again to win the next general election.
Well, staying Priti Patel there, I will be hoping to do interviews with other Tory leadership hopefuls in the coming days. What do you make of that? Let me know. We covered a lot of bases there. Did you like what you heard? Do you have points where you'd like to push back on her? Anyway, coming up, as it's revealed that at least one child as young as 5 is on the waiting list for NHS gender care, are they putting young kids in danger? But next, I'll bring you all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. They've just landed. I've got them here. Stay tuned.
Good evening. It's time for your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking further ahead, and there will be some rain at times for many of us as we go through Thursday and Friday, but for the time being, we're changing to something a bit cooler, a bit blustery and a bit showery because there's an area of low pressure to the northwest of the UK, and this is driving some showery bursts across parts of the UK. For many central and eastern parts of England and also eastern Scotland, it's actually going to be a largely dry night with some clear skies, but further west we have quite a few showers piling in, and some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side. Most notable perhaps in the south will be the fresher feel to things. Temperatures will be a good few degrees lower than they were last night, perhaps a bit more comfortable for sleeping. Taking a closer look at first thing tomorrow morning, then across much of central southern England, it's looking like a bright fine start, but some showers across parts of the southwest and also some showers for parts of Wales as well, and northwest England too. Meanwhile, northeast England starting the day largely dry. Quite a few showers across Northern Ireland, but it's across Scotland where we're going to have the heaviest, most persistent rain, some showery rain making its way northeastwards as we go through the morning. This rain could cause some problems on the roads, could be some spray around, perhaps even a little bit of localised flooding, but it does clear away northwards as we go through the morning and breaks up, so just turning quite showery across Scotland and also across many northern and western parts through much of the day. Towards the south and east, you have a greater chance of avoiding those showers, and here we'll have the highest temperatures, highs of around 23, 24, so not quite as high as they have been recently. More wet weather to come as we go through towards the end of the week. There are a series of fronts waiting to come in from the west, so most of us will see some rain arriving as we go through Thursday, and there could be a bit more rain to come as we go through Friday as well. All the time it's likely to be quite blustery or breezy, and so that will add to the relatively cool feel to things considering it is August. Bye-bye.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. We are on GB News, and it is time now to bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And, well, there's a lot to go at here. There's a lot to go at. The Metro rioting accused start facing court. Judgment Day is here. So this is Keir Starmer saying, well, and actually happening, that they could conceivably be sentenced by the end of the week. The Telegraph now, and this is what we're going to be launching our discussion off with the panel. Rioters face terror charges, warned the DPP. So police are braced for more violence. This is tomorrow, OK? 6,000 specialist officers are on standby. There are reports that the country could face riots up and down it at a variety of different locations tomorrow, with immigration centres being targeted and then counter-protesters. There are at least 30 locations that have been reported, and there are calls now for people who engage in that disorder to face terror charges. We'll return to that, all right? Let's go to The Guardian now. Lawyers fear for safety amid threats from the far right. So this is another one. So immigration lawyers have been warned to take extra security measures to stay away from work amid far-right threats to target their firms. There is also, the former head of the counter-terror police, Neil Basu, who's been described by people as, woke police officer. He described himself as woke, etc. He's the one that Keir Starmer wanted in charge of this new Board of Command, apparently, and then he turned the job down. He's saying as well that these people now meet the threshold for terrorism offences, right? And so that would elevate the charging and sentencing. Just round us off with the Mirror. 10 years hard labour, jail warning to rioters. Government gets tough as fears grow over fresh violence. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says cowardly thugs do not represent Britain. Right, OK, I'll zone in. I've got my panel with me now. We've got Esther, Stephen and Matthew. Stephen, I'll start with you. Do you think that people on these riots and protests should face terror charges?
All violence is terror. If you've ever been attacked in a pub, that's terrifying. If you've ever been punched, it's terrifying. So whatever happens to you, it's a fear. But does this reach the threshold of what I regard as bombing children in Manchester? No. Does this amount to the bombing of what happened in Westminster? No. Is this the same sort of kind of rioting that I experienced as a 14-year-old in Moss Side? Absolutely. And Anderson, who was the chief of police then, got in the police en masse, 1,500 arrested in a week. They weren't terror charges. The reason why we're using terror charges is because we have weak politicians who are scared of their own shadows from actually enforcing the law properly, fairly and equally. If I'm getting upset about this, it's because I'm sick to death of seeing Labour and Tory MPs who all use the lovely words, this is horrible and it's awful. We'll get to grip with it. It's not terrorism, it is just pure thuggery when it happens, and then start dealing with it on the causes of it. £400 million was pumped into Moss Side after the issues then. People are concerned about mass immigration. Deal with that. OK, all right. Esther, so 400 people have already, there's been issues, right, in terms of people being arrested and stuff. 6,000 specialist riot officers they're on standby. Now, all of this appears to be, for far right. I mean, everyone knows, there's been widely reported that there are counter-protests set as well, from whether they call themselves Antifa or anti-fascists or whatever you want to say, right? I mean, do you think that, and we hope this doesn't happen, but, going after an immigration centre, or indeed, according to the front page of The Guardian, immigration lawyer, is that terror?
It could be. And I'm not entirely sure on the definition of sort of how terror would be defined, but it is targeted. It is targeting an identity group. So if you target a mosque, for instance, and, throw Molotov cocktails or bricks through a mosque, you're clearly targeting it because of the people that go there. You're not targeting a mosque to attack Jews, right? However, I would say that I don't think it meets the threshold of actually enforcing terror laws, even though you could argue that it is targeted because they're attacking hotels. They know asylum seekers are being housed in. They're attacking mosques and all of that. And the reason why I say that, and this is basically a nuance that I see, is because, one, it's not consistent, and two, the underlying issues would probably point to that being the fueling factor, as opposed to these people just hate Muslims, therefore they're
okay.
I mean, I don't doubt that there are people that just actually hate Muslims and took that opportunity to try and destroy mosques and all of that. But I just don't think it meets the threshold. If you're bombing Westminster, you're sending a very clear message, and you're attacking the centre of power in this country.
Okay. All right. Matthew, what's your views on this? So this is on a couple of the front pages, and it does echo the rhetoric of the former head of the counter-terror police, he's adamant that this does meet the terror charge.
Well, I mean, I think we're going to see people charged with a mixture of offences, and frankly, I think it's up to the Crown Prosecution Service and the Chief Prosecutor to decide, what charges are most appropriate, what charges are most likely to get a conviction based on the detailed evidence that they have. So I would think in the majority of cases it doesn't meet terrorism, and we've gone... terrorism, the level of evidence needed to push a terror charge, but we may see that there's some activity which does sort of count as terror. So let's see things handled on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. I worry that there could be a concern that if we see people who've done, unspeakable things, again, we hope this doesn't happen and all of that, but if we see people that do that, and some people who have targeted, migrant hotels or, hit a police officer or something, and all of a sudden they start getting sentences of years in prison, are we not going to end up seeing a contrast? In fact, look, the reason I'm asking is because we already are seeing a contrast here on social media where people look up the convictions that have been given for people who've committed offences like rape, for example, and things like that. And again, I'm just wondering if that would play into the two-tier aspects of this, Steve.
Look, I've been concerned about this since I was a lawyer at university. The Internal Security Act 1982 of South Africa was replicated into the terror laws in Northern Ireland. We said it was awful in South Africa, but then we did. We put it into Northern Ireland. We then said we wouldn't expand upon it. We did under Tony Blair. We started to expand this definition of terrorism. And now here we are in 2024 looking at a way that actually is a chance of saying it's all about the far right. And yet, I never see the same sort of issues going on other sides.
It could be deterrent, though. And that's the thing. It could be a deterrent.
So is prison. Getting them in prison, but we're not building enough prisons.
OK.
That's a deterrent.
Well, the government has ensured there's 450 prison places by rejigging a young offenders institution, bringing some new places online a few weeks early, which we're going to open. So the government is making sure that our prison places are available, and that's where people who are convicted should be.
So deterrence works for criminals fighting in this circumstance, but deterrent doesn't work for those coming across on small boats. So there's again, this is feeding in to people's views.
Difference between Rwanda and prison, Stephen.
There's not a difference.
Well, I'm just going to whiz us on. I want your views on this one, Esther. So it's a controversial Algerian boxer, Imani Khalif, has already been guaranteed a bronze medal before taking on a boxer from Thailand at the Paris Olympics this evening. And having beaten their opponent tonight, Khalif will now appear in the Olympic final for welterweight boxers. Of course, they face criticism for fighting female opponents, mainly because they previously failed testosterone and eligibility tests, which some people are saying now actually just prove that they're a man. What do you think, Esther?
What was the name of the Thai boxer?
Yeah, no, it was a good name for Thai boxer, yeah. Yeah, no, it was... I think you could describe it as traditionally Thai. It was a long name, and I will not be trying my best to repeat that on this show. So do you think that what we're seeing now is a disgrace?
Yes, I do, because here's the thing. The IOC basically ignored the judgment of the previous boxing organisation. Exactly. Yeah. And they've now created a story where they didn't need to be a story. If you just stuck with that and said, listen, this person has hormonal and physical discrepancies that are more in line with the male biology, the XY chromosomes being a clear indication, this wouldn't need to be a story. I mean, this particular boxer has done an interview saying, she's received a lot of abuse and the greatest sort of gift would be to win gold and all of that. But the point, I can't believe that's the story.
Well, of course, the greatest gift is to win gold.
Hold on, but I can't believe that's the story over the Italian boxer saying she has never faced a punch so strong in her entire life. Yeah. Actually, she was terrified for her life. How did we get to the point where a woman saying that who is a professional boxer, who's not new to this, who's not a rookie, who's not me, right, who's been boxing for years, is saying that 2 punches in, 46 seconds into the fight, she had to stop to save her own life. And no one is raising alarm bells, but somehow we're the bigots for saying this individual with chromosome consistent with that of a man is the real victim here. That's what
they're probably going to win gold. And my understanding is that there's a good chance that another boxer in a similar issue as well could win gold. And I'm concerned at how much we're going to see this. Obviously we'll have to ask Thailand's Janjim Suwanapeng.
What was that?
How she felt. You heard. About how she felt. About...
Beautifully done.
You did that so better than I would.
Now, well, look, I've still got loads more to go. I've got loads more front pages for you. We're also going to be doing tonight's Greatest Bristling Union, Jackass. I will see you in just a second. Stay tuned.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A new report suggests that Prince Harry is lonely in California and he's considering returning to Britain despite a seismic falling out with his father and his brother.
But the question we're asking this morning is whether Meghan would come with her Prince Charming or whether Harry would perhaps be more welcome here if he came solo.
Like Kinsey, we'll go to Kinsey Schofield live now in LA. Kinsey, we've got lots of time to talk about this and speculate this. We've got about 6 minutes or so to talk. But what's behind all of this? Where are these thoughts coming from?
They're coming from royal author Hugo Vickers, and I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Vickers, but he's written over 30 books about the British royal family. And he told The Sun that Prince Harry will ultimately return to the UK with his tail between his legs. He described the Duke of Sussex as angry and says Harry is genuinely petrified of losing his wife, Meghan Markle. When asked his predictions for where Harry and Meghan will be in the next 20 years, Vickers told The Sun, I think he'll come home, explaining, I think Harry will come home, and if he comes home, we must be very nice to him because he won't particularly want to. He's quite angry, suggesting that he would be coming home solo. Vickers also said that Prince Harry looks slightly petrified of Meghan Markle and that King Charles has left the door wide open for Harry's return if and when he does decide to come back.
I can only imagine the culture shock that Prince Harry has faced arriving there. This is a kid that has grown up in castles.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I've got some more front pages for you. Let's do it. So we go with the Daily Mail. Shame of the child rioters. Some people aged 11, apparently. Prosecutors are warning of terrorism charges. Well, presumably not for them, but anyway. Musk brands the Prime Minister two-tier care. Now 2,000 officers are braced for 30 flashpoints. This is tomorrow night, OK? Very, very, very big concerns about what could happen tomorrow night. We will, of course, be bringing it all to you on this show. If indeed anything does happen, we hope it doesn't. Let's go to the Times. Thousands of police readied for fresh riots. Yeah, look, there's clearly a theme on the front pages here of tomorrow. We've spoken a heck of a lot about all of the riots and all of the protests and everything so far, whether or not they should be bracketed as terror offences, what should be done about it, should we recall Parliament. But there's another story that I wanted to bring to your attention as well. So at least one child under the age of 5 is on a list of thousands waiting for NHS gender care. Now, this is in direct contradiction with the proposed health service rules. More than 5,700 under-18s are in line to be seen by new NHS gender clinics after they replace the controversial Tavistock clinic. So the new specialist hubs will offer a suite of mental health support and screen for other conditions, such as autism. But new NHS guidelines say no one under the age of 7 should receive care. Lester, what do you think about this? You know, you've got someone here, at least one person under the age of 5, who's in the queue for this. Are you shaking your head?
There are no words. Why? Why would... I mean, I remember myself as a 5-year-old, I wanted to be a frog. If I was in the UK at the time, I probably would have, I don't know, had springs put under my feet so I could hop around. I mean, this is ludicrous. How do we get to the point where a 5-year-old is on gender, or some sort of gender care list?
Matthew,
public dive.
What's your view on this? You know, because look, again, like with everything now in this country, this is now Labour's problem, isn't it? And you know, are we going to end up seeing more of this stuff? Do you think?
Well, no, because Labour's fully backed the Cass report, the recommendations that came out of the Cass report. I mean, I hope that this is because it hasn't fed down to GPs who've been referring people, and that we won't be seeing under 7s referred to the service. And I think everybody should rally around the Cass formula, which is having patient-centred, multi-tier approach, so that all the young issues facing a young person are dealt with, as well as their feelings of gender dysphoria.
Well, where do you think this kind of stuff comes from, Stephen? You know, so I suppose what I'm asking is, do you think that transgenderism exists? Is it something that's taught or picked up from an early age, or what do you think?
I think there's a cultural element to it. My daughter is a young girl who looked at this and felt physically sick about the idea of a 5-year-old having to go through this problem of treatment. And I think those involved in this, actually, and I'm going to say it out loud, I think it's a form of child abuse. I think you cannot look at children like that and say that they can make these informed decisions about what physical body they are at 5-year-olds. And any professional in this should be looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, what sort of human being am I? It's quite fine for teenagers to actually have physical changes. We know that. Plenty of my friends who are gay and understood it when they were younger, but that stage, not at all. And so professionals involved in this, I think, should be struck off, and anybody involved in looking at children under the age of 7. And I do hope that Matthew's team in Labour Party look at this and start looking at children for what they actually are, children.
Well, I mean, West Reading said he's going to keep the ban on puberty blockers for under 18s. So.
Get a grip on these people because they need. I think that rolling in.
I mean, look, hey, nothing's impossible, but I think he probably will keep that. But an NHS spokesman has said the NHS has made a commitment to fully implement the recommendations of the Cass Review, including Dr. Cass's recommendation that younger children should be seen by the specialist service as early as possible for the purpose of providing support to the family, rather than for any clinical intervention with the child. So, we'll have to watch this space.
As statements go, that's a bit clearer than usual, because actually it does say there's going to be, it's about the family and not about, waiting till the child's older to look at the issue.
Yeah, OK, right, now, former England footballer turned manager Wayne Rooney has recently taken the job at Championship club Plymouth Argyle. And during Sky News' coverage of disorder in Plymouth last night, one eagle-eyed viewer thought that they'd spotted Wayne Rooney amongst the crowds, which, judging by Rooney's fiery temper during his playing career, may not have been such a surprise. There we go. So it's the background there. He's got the cap on and he's got the beard. We're going to play it one more time. It does, I must admit, right, it does have the look of Wayne Rooney. But in reality, the lookalike was actually uncovered as a member of Sky News' own team, right, leaving the real Wayne Rooney to focus on his football.
The reporter looks like Ed Davey.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
There's a new Ed Davey Wayne Rooney show.
Absolutely.
Wayne Rooney,
In Plymouth.
In Plymouth, right. Idea for a show, everybody.
Ed's going to be deputy manager.
I'll tell you what, I have had some worse ideas for a show.
We're saying nothing.
I did a couple of them anyway. Right. It's revealed today's greatest Britain Union Jackass. Esther, I'm going to start with your greatest Britain, please.
Keely Hodgkinson. I expect to win this because it's not every day that you win a gold medal at the Olympics.
Right, OK, fair enough. All right, who's your greatest Britain?
Oh, it's got to be Elon Musk for winding up Keir Starmer in the way that it has to respond by tweet. That's good trolling.
An X, otherwise Elon won't like it if you don't misname X. You'll get cancelled by Elon.
Yeah. Go on, Matthew.
So mine is not a household name, but it's a real, true, great British hero. It's a guy called Sir Ernest Hall, who's died this week in his 90s, and he turned an amazing building, which is a derelict mill in Halifax, called Dean Clough, which was literally falling to bits. And in the 80s, he saw the opportunities, and it's now an amazing mixture of art and private businesses. And it's absolutely thriving. It's really helped to save Halifax.
I mean, it's niche, but a good one. Yeah. A good one nonetheless.
And a good Yorkshire hero,
Yeah, there we go. Today's winner of the Great Britain is Elon Musk.
No!
Yeah, I know. All right, so who's your Union Jackass, Esther?
Jess Phillips, for suggesting that people that felt threatened should have come onto the streets to riot. I mean, I'm sure she's kicking herself now, but that was not a good look when she said that the gangs of rioters were provoked because they heard rumours of far-right people coming to attack them.
Okay.
As if that makes it OK.
All right, OK, go on quickly.
Got to be Mark Rowley, the chief of police, for the slap of the phone. He's a new advert.
He's apologised now. I thought that was... I mean, that's one way to tell everyone that a meeting didn't go as well as you'd hoped, isn't it?
Yeah,
to come out and... go on.
Mine is Tory Police and Crime Commissioner in Hampshire, Donna Jones, for her silly and deeply unhelpful comments seeming to try and justify the actions of the thugs over the last few days. OK, all right.
Today's winner of the Union Jackass goes to Jess Phillips for her bizarre...
I only win when you're on holiday.
You do? Yeah, exactly.
Can you go away more, please?
You're not the only person who has begged for that to happen. Right, okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. And I'll be back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Headliners next. See you then.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, it's time for your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking further ahead, and there will be some rain at times for many of us as we go through Thursday and Friday, but for the time being we're changing to something a bit cooler, a bit blustery and a bit showery because there's an area of low pressure to the northwest of the UK, and this is driving some showery bursts across parts of the UK. For many central and eastern parts of England and also eastern Scotland, it's actually going to be a largely dry night with some clear skies, but further west we have quite a few showers piling in, and some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side. Most notable perhaps in the south will be the fresher feel to things. Temperatures will be a good few degrees lower than they were last night, perhaps a bit more comfortable for sleeping. Taking a closer look at first thing tomorrow morning, then across much of central southern England it's looking like a bright fine start, but some showers across parts of the southwest and also some showers for parts of Wales as well, and northwest England too. Meanwhile, northeast England starting the day largely dry. Quite a few showers across Northern Ireland, but it's across Scotland where we're going to have the heaviest, most persistent rain, some showery rain making its way northeastwards as we go through the morning. This rain could cause some problems on the roads, could be some spray around, perhaps even a little bit of localised flooding, but it does clear away northwards as we go through the morning and breaks up, so just turning quite showery across Scotland and also across many northern and western parts through much of the day. Towards the south and east you have a greater chance of avoiding those showers, and here we'll have the highest temperatures, highs of around 23, 24, so not quite as high as they have been recently. More wet weather to come as we go through towards the end of the week. There are a series of fronts waiting to come in from the west, so
we could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway, an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. David from Kent was our last big winner. Listen to what he had to say about getting that winning call.
Hi, I'm David from Kent and I won £15,000 and it couldn't have come at a better time. I was gobsmacked. What have you got to lose for what it costs? In fact, I've done it again this week, so I'd recommend it to anybody.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
You'll relate to this one. We've all been there, haven't we? Tensions high in the car as you head off on the latest adventure or holiday during the summer break.
Now, with the average family set to spend about 3.5 hours a week together in the car driving on the roads during the holidays, new research has shown that our relationships could be tested to the limit.
Yes, figures show that 21% are having arguments for simple things like the driver going the wrong way, which we were saying is not actually very simple. That's very simple.
I was going to say that. I'm surprised it's just 21%.
Yes.
If I was going the wrong way down the road,
you'd know about
it. You'd hear from me.
A further 20% squabbling over how their partner drives, yes, and 25% admitting to being more prone to rowing when their kids are misbehaving. It's a lot to deal with, isn't it?
Fair enough.
Well, we're joined now by dating and relationship coach and author Persia Lawson. Good to see you this morning, Persia. What is it about being in a car that just makes things so tense?
Well, I think it's probably quite obvious, isn't it? It's the fact that we are in a confined space, we can't go anywhere, and it can just really create so much tension and stress, especially if you and your other half or a family member, whoever you're in the car with, are going through a little bit of a tricky time. And if it's really hot outside, that doesn't help either. So inevitably, it creates a lot of irritation and bickering, I would say, from my experience.
And what is it about children? If you add children into the mix, it just makes things very, very difficult, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of, are we there yet?
Yeah.
Kicking the back seat and just squabbles, kicking the siblings. So adding children into the mix is just going to turn the heat up on that tension.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines from the GB Newsroom at 11 o'clock. The Prime Minister has promised communities will be safe after he chaired an emergency COBRA meeting on efforts to tackle the unrest in the UK. Speaking a while ago, Sir Keir Starmer said those taking part in the unrest will feel the full force of the law.
The COBRA meeting was to coordinate our response to the disorder. And I made it very clear on a number of occasions that those involved will feel the full force of the law. So we coordinated, we went through some of the numbers. Over 400 people now have been arrested, 100 have been charged, some in relation to online activity, and a number of them are already in court. And I'm now expecting substantive sentencing before the end of this week. That should send a very powerful